Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Very glad to have you here. And apologies for the slight delay. We were adjusting some technical problem. We are here today from many countries in Europe and beyond. And as you know, to discuss about the possibility to enact and put in practice a logic grounded on children's rights in terms of protecting victims that are victims of crime, children that are victims of crime. We have a lot of speakers today. We tried to keep the seminar very practical in order to see good experience. As you know, this is the second international seminar that we are holding under the e-Protect project. The first one was very, very interesting and solid in terms of contents. And I'm sure that also today we will hear a lot of interesting experience in order to improve practices and philosophy beyond the objective of guaranteeing appropriate assessment and multidisciplinary cooperation for children who are victims of crime. Let me just start this conference with a very critical note in terms of the situation that we are having at the moment in Europe. We are very, as probably all of us, are very concerned about the situation. We didn't expect a war. We are talking about victims of crime. We know very well that in every violent action to solve international controversy, children are the first victims. So we strongly condemn any violent act to solve international disputes. And we hope really that as soon as possible, there will be a possibility to see other means to solve political problems. I think it's, I remember this thing because it's really a very dramatic moment for Europe. And I think we can't avoid to consider this as the context where we are talking. So thank you for allowing me to remember this very dramatic situation we are having at the moment. We are going to have a series of intervention. I think that my colleague Daya Venke will take note of the question. You can use the chat if there are questions, and we will try at the end of each session to see if there are some questions and have a session where the speaker will have the possibility to explain more about what we present. Let me just get into, since we are a bit in late into the program, and we have a very interesting introduction by Joanna van Blixen in her role as the Promise Barnhouse Network Coordinator. She has an extensive knowledge about the issues that we are treating today, and also a lot of experience. We ask Shona and Promise to provide us a background and an introduction to what we can intend as a multi-stakeholder cooperation for case assessment and decision making. So we were discussing with Promise, with Shona and Olivia about the fact that maybe the time is not enough to explain all the complexity of Barnhouse intervention, but we thought that it was, a good way to start our conversation, connected with practical experience in Europe and connected with standards that already are informed by these practices. So thank you very much, and Joanna van Blixen, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity to present Barnhouse in this meeting today, and especially to explain how countries all over Europe are adapting this model to their own contexts to ensure protection, justice, recovery for child victims of violence. And indeed, there is a lot more content than what I could squeeze into today, but we have a website with a lot more information, and I'll put that in the chat when I'm done. So Don't worry. First, a short introduction. Hi, I'm Shauna von Blixen. I work at the Council of the Baltic Sea States as an advisor. The CBSS is an intergovernmental platform for cooperation in this region. With 11 member states and the European Union, we carry out regional dialogue and engage in practical projects on identity, sustainability, and security. Children at risk is one of the flagship priorities. We have an expert group which gathers senior representatives from our member states who engage in dialogue and exchange good practices. Together, we're promoting strong national child protection systems, child-friendly justice, and international partnerships for nonviolent childhoods. A key part of our mission is to promote good practice from our region, and that includes the Barnahus model, of course. Barnahus was first established in one of our member states, Iceland, almost 25 years ago. And today, 10 out of our 11 member states are operating a Barnahus or similar service. To promote the Barnahus model, in 2015, we initiated something we call Promise. It started as a project. Today, it's a network, which is our key engine to supporting 40 members in over 20 countries and more than that even, to progressively achieve excellence in Barnahus practice. So as you know, an indication that a child has been exposed to violence represents an important opportunity for protection, justice, and recovery. It also represents a moment of shared responsibility, as many different actors who step in to play their different roles. So social welfare, child protection, law enforcement, medical, mental health services. Unfortunately, it can also represent the starting point for an extended and potentially harmful experience for the child. Too many children tell us that they wish they hadn't reported the violence in the first place, because once the machinery started to roll, it was in many ways worse than the abuse itself. And these children, of course, overcame substantial barriers to even speak about the abuse in the first place. So there are a number of reasons why children regret telling. They may be drawn into parallel inquiries and assessments. They may be moving between different agencies and disciplines. There may be little or no coordination of interventions and exchange of information. And this may lead to information that could have contributed to justice, protection, or recovery becoming lost. A growing body of research and experience is showing that children can remember and can provide accurate information about events, including traumatic events, from a young age. At the same time, there are many different factors which might inhibit the child from speaking openly, such as fear and trauma, experiences of discrimination, intimidation, threats, a low level of trust, language skills, conversational abilities. All of these may have an impact on the ability of a child to give an account of what has happened to them. Since all of these professionals need to hear the child's story, the child may also be exposed to multiple interviews conducted at different times and perhaps with people who have varying degrees of competence with such interviews. The setting may be intimidating, perhaps without respect to the child's right to privacy. We also continue to hear unfounded assumptions about children's capacity and credibility to give accurate accounts of what has happened to them. And we also hear that children are not met with respect and trust. Such adverse experiences can cause re-traumatization and even traumatization of the child. It can prevent their disclosure and even, in the worst cases, discredit the child as a witness. this is quite serious, since the child's disclosure and their cooperation are fundamental to ensuring their right to safety and protection, to determining their needs for physical and mental recovery. These adverse experiences may prevent or cause delays in the child's recovery, especially if the process turns out to be a traumatic experience, especially if the child is asked to repeatedly revisit the events. Importantly, the child's disclosure is fundamental to securing evidence that is of high evidentiary value and a criminal investigation and judicial process that protects the rights of both the child and the accused. So today, there is an increasing recognition that multidisciplinary collaboration is a crucial aspect of fulfilling the rights of the child to protection, participation, support, assistance. And Barnahus is recognized by a number of international organizations, such as the UN, the EU, the Council of Europe, as a leading child-friendly multidisciplinary model. The word Barnahus is Icelandic, and it means a house for children, and it is an actual physical house placed and organized in a way that makes children feel comfortable and safe. Like all of the services are tailored especially to them, because they are. The image on this slide is a snapshot of the setup and organization of Barnahus. It's sometimes described as a house with 4 different rooms, including child protection down in the bottom left here, the criminal investigation, top left, physical health, top right, mental health, bottom right. The 4 rooms are embedded in a multidisciplinary architecture, guided by key principles such as best interest of the child, a child-friendly and participatory environment, inclusion, professionalism, interagency collaboration. The co-located professionals all have their child-friendly room and the equipment that they need to carry out their specialized intervention. And beyond carrying out their specific role, they meet together to discuss cases, including the individual needs, appropriate response, and follow-up for each individual child. They share information according to national law and protocols. The role of Barnahus staff is to coordinate the interventions and to facilitate this multidisciplinary collaboration. And a key purpose of this setup is to build a protective and child-friendly environment where the child is placed at the center of a comprehensive, holistic intervention that meets the rights and sometimes very complex needs of each individual child. This prevents that children are drawn into those parallel and uncoordinated processes that we talked about just a moment ago. It reduces the number of times the child has to share the story of their abuse. It also ensures that each child receives an individually adapted response by staff who are specifically trained in interviewing or meeting the needs of children that may have been exposed to violence. Importantly, it ensures practice that protects the procedural safeguards of both the presumed victim and the perpetrator. So today, the Barnahus model is spreading rapidly, and the spread of this model is enabled by its flexibility. It can be adapted to different national, legal, procedural, socio-economical contexts. For example, in Croatia and the UK, Barnahus is embedded as a function of the health system. In Iceland and Denmark, it's the child protection system. In Norway, it's law enforcement. Regardless, they all embrace multidisciplinary interagency collaboration in one child-friendly premise that generates important connections between all relevant systems. Another adaptation. In some places, it's a police officer who interviews the child in Barnahus in the investigative interview. In others, it's another type of specialist, such as a psychologist or a social worker. Here too, all Barnahus are ensuring that the person who interviews the child has special training in forensic interviews with children, that they use evidence-based protocols, and that the representatives from the multidisciplinary team observe the interview in an adjacent room. It is, however, important to note here that while you can adapt Barnahus to your context, measures should be taken to ensure that you do not depart from international standards, core principles, and evidence-based practice that are inherent to the Barnahus model. That is why we have something called the Barnahus Quality Standards, which addresses the fundamental principles such as the best interests of the child participation, organization, collaboration, joint case management, and so forth. These standards draw on and contribute to international law and guidance, including from the UNCRC and the Lanzarote Convention. In the context of this meeting, I wanted to take a moment to look at a few parts more closely. First, the investigative interview and Barnahus quality number 6. In Barnahus, interviews are carried out according to evidence-based protocol to ensure the quality and quantity of evidence obtained. The investigative interviews are carried out by specialist staff who receive ongoing training and supervision in interviewing children who regularly perform such interviews. Regarding the location and recording, child forensic interviews should be conducted in a Barnahus setting, and all interviews should be audio-visually recorded. The forensic interview should be carried out by a single professional. All relevant members of the multidisciplinary interagency team take part in preparing the interview and may observe the interview. A system is in place to allow for interaction between the interviewer and the professionals in that observation room, which you can see in the bottom right part of the slide here. Respecting the defendant's right to a fair trial is a central part of this standard, which includes, for example, ensuring that there are arrangements in place that allow the defense to pose questions to the victim or the witness via the interviewer. Finally, interviews should be adapted to the child. For example, their age, their development, their cultural background, their language, or other special needs. On this slide, you see images from 2 Barnahus, which practice in accordance to our standards. These are photos of the interview room and the observation room in Iceland on the left and in Linköping on the right. So by practicing to these standards, the Barnahus is ensuring that child forensic interviews do not cause traumatization or re-traumatization. The criminal and pre-trial investigations are helping to produce admissible evidence of high evidential value. And the criminal investigation is carried out in the context of a multidisciplinary interagency collaboration and a comprehensive intervention. And on that note, I would like to also highlight now how multidisciplinary interagency interventions are the foundation of Barnahus. Each child is offered a balanced, professional, child-friendly intervention featuring joint case management and review. The criminal investigation and the child forensic interview that I just described is one part of a comprehensive multidisciplinary response, which is closely connected to the many different processes and interventions that take place in Barnahus. So it's not only important that the forensic interview meets certain professional standards, it is crucial that each interview is embedded in this multidisciplinary setting and contributes to the overall interagency response. So Barnahus Quality Standard number 2 sets out important cornerstones for multidisciplinary organization and collaboration. It's crucial to establish formal agreements, structures, procedures to ensure commitment, trust, sustainable operations in Barnahus, such as having a formal interagency agreement in place. Standard 5 focuses on good practice for interagency case management. Here, regular case planning meetings gather the different professionals to plan, observe, and follow up on the different cases that come to Barnahus. And such multidisciplinary interagency work supports the application of international laws and guidance. For example, Article 19 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child and the authoritative guidance from its committee emphasizes that states should take all appropriate legislative, administrative, and social measures to protect the child from all forms of violence and exploitation. It also says that states should implement effective procedures for support, care, prevention, and for identification, reporting, referral, investigation, treatment, and follow-up for instances of child maltreatment and, as appropriate, judicial involvement. And the committee emphasizes that intersectoral coordination mandated by protocols and agreements is crucial to implement this obligation. You can also look to European law, which includes obligations that concern, for example, multidisciplinary coordination and collaboration, individual assessments, and best interest assessments. And beyond meeting the legal obligations, it's also important that the professionals who gather in Barnahus feel that it makes sense to provide their services in this way. And we can see that with some quotes here on the screen. And I'll just pick one of them to read. For example, from Linda Valine, a police officer. We get a lot of practical help around the planning and also when the child comes to Barnahus. This means we can focus on what we are good at, the interview of the child. We can also contact Barnahus staff for help and support. And I'm sure you'll get these slides later so you can read the rest. So that's very briefly about Barnahus and 3 of our standards out of 10. One key question that any country must ask itself is, of course, is this model feasible here? And as a start, I would like to recall that Barnahus is a flexible model and that it has been successfully adapted to countries with many different legal, socioeconomic, procedural, and cultural national contexts. All of these countries have 3 things in common. First, a sincere commitment to implementing their obligations under international law concerning children's rights to protection, justice, and recovery. And second, a willingness to explore innovative solutions that others have tried and tested successfully. Now, joining meetings like this one today are important steps, not only to demonstrating, but also acting on those 2 elements. And the third thing these countries all have in common is that this is often an incremental process. Most Barnahus don't have every detail in place from day one, and even the most experienced Barnahus are still, to this day, evolving their services and developing new and promising practices. So if you are convinced and you are thinking about where do you go from here, I have 2 practical next steps for you. They are a feasibility study and a roadmap. And the next speakers come from Portugal, and I know that they have recently gone through both of these things. So I'm sure that their presentation will be extremely interesting for you to listen to. I just want to highlight some key features of these 2 steps for you to keep in mind during today and in the weeks to come. So starting with the feasibility study. This phase identifies the steps that a child goes through today, from initial report to the trial, and what it might look like if Barnahus is implemented. This generates a better understanding of the impact that Barnahus has and how reporting and referral mechanisms, procedures and interventions, how these things may need to change in terms of organization and implementation. Feasibility studies that have helped countries to make progress to launching their Barnahus have included desk study and field study aspects. And this has included taking multidisciplinary interagency delegations to study visits of functioning Barnahus. On that note, effective feasibility studies have included all relevant stakeholders early on, or at least as many as they can. And this contributes to building trust, mutual respect, and a deeper understanding of the roles and the potential constraints that each agency is working under. This is one of the most important processes in setting up Barnahus, as it's a crucial moment to build that joint commitment and strong interagency teams. Now, PROMIS promotes that Barnahus are formally embedded in national systems. For example, in the judicial system, in law enforcement, health, child protection systems. Each Barnahus should be an integral part of and contribute to national justice and child protection systems. The adaptation of the model is therefore crucial. You have to have a team with a fairly deep understanding of how things work and what will work in your country before you develop a model. Otherwise, you risk putting something in place that is disconnected from your systems and procedures, and that will not contribute to the success or sustainability of the model in your context. On to that roadmap, where you take what you've learned from the feasibility study to propose milestones and actions. For example, if a key outcome of your feasibility study is that you have a lack of competent staff, then training will be an important element of your roadmap. A roadmap should facilitate interagency agreements and internal alignment so that everyone works in a coordinated way towards the same goal, exploring and planning of different options, scenarios, and activities. And this document is a clear way to communicate your vision and strategy to an external audience. Here too, this is ideally developed with the involvement of the whole interagency team so that there is initial agreement on the steps and actions in the roadmap. And if this isn't possible, the lead agency in charge could formally adopt the roadmap and ensure that it's disseminated to the key actors. I'm coming to a close now, and with this final part, I want you all to know that a key aspect of our work at the PROMIS Barnahus Network is to support national and local agencies to adapt the Barnahus and to establish these setups in their contexts and to progressively achieve the international legal obligations and so forth. And we are very firm in that multidisciplinary models can bring about considerable positive change for child victims of violence. We fully recognize that multidisciplinary and interagency collaboration has its challenges. However, we see that many challenges are shared across professions and across borders, and that there is a wealth of experience to draw on from each other in addressing these obstacles. And it's inspiring to see that so many countries are finding a way to overcome these obstacles and to progressively adapt and refine their practice. And we strongly believe that with political commitment, a thorough analysis, and the involvement of all of the key actors, that the Barnahus model is feasible for everywhere in Europe. And together with DCI, we at the PROMIS Barnahus Network and the Council of the Baltic Sea States remain at your disposal to support this process. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shona. Very, very inspiring. And thank you for providing us a context for our discussion. Actually, you you pointed out how you know this the creation of this context in a very proactive way could determine the possibility to apply principles and provision to the CSC to something that is very difficult. And also, I would like to point out this adaptability dimension, which is very important given the fact that we have all different contexts. So, and the sustainability, of course, and the fact that we consider Barnhouse or this house that you show as you know an inspiring dimension that can take different shape, but stick to the same principle and direction. So thank you very much for starting in a so inspiring way our conversation. And you already pointed out that we have the Portuguese experience here that we are very interested to know in terms of adaptation and feasibility. And we have the honor to have here Mrs. Rosario Farmhouse, which is the president of the National Commission for the Promotion of the Right and the Protection of Children and Young People since November 2017. She's also part of the steering committee for the rights of the child, the Council of Europe. We are very happy to have you here. And we are very eager to listen to you and to the psychologists Paulo Pelicio and José Matos in order to understand better what's going on in Portugal and how also you can inspire our action in our countries. Thank you for being with us, Rosario.
Thank you very much, Pippo. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'll be speaking only for a few minutes because my colleague Paulo Pelicio will present very well our project. We are partners, several partners in this project for children that wants to implement the Barnahus model in Portugal. I would say that for the National Commission for the Promotion of Rights and the Protection of Children and Young People, it's a great pleasure to be part of this project. We realized long ago that the situation of children victims of sexual abuse in Portugal are still, as Shona explained very well, are still living in a very hard conditions, especially after they denounced the situation. We have a very good group of partners that Paulo will explain, trying to avoid this re-victimization of the child, and also so I'm sorry that I touched on my microphone. I'm sorry. So my words are only to say that in Portugal, the National Commission is very committed with the implementation of this project. Paulo, from the Associação para o Planeamento da Família, is the coordinator of the project. That's why I will explain so well. But as Shona said, we would like to have in Portugal this model adapted to our situation, our national context, with all the partners, having in mind all Barnahus quality standards. So we have learned a lot with Shona and with all the steps that we have done. And I would say that our National Commission is working hard with this project and also with other projects connected with the justice for children and all projects connected with the promotion of rights and protection of children. So I would say that Paulo is in much better position than me to explain all the project. Just say that in Portugal, the National Commission is in charge of the planning of state intervention and coordinates, monitors and evaluates the initiatives of public entities and the community to promote the rights and protect children. We are coordinating 311 local child services, and that's why we are so enthusiastic, so committed to have this model in Portugal, because we realize that the situation of children with sexual abuse is really needs a better and a coordinated answer, that we are working on it. So maybe I will pass the floor to Paulo and he will explain very well. We have also with us a member, José Matos, from the Judiciary Police, who is in charge in Portugal for this police answer, and maybe they will be for sure much more explain much better than me all the project and how does it work in Portugal. So people, if you allow me, I will pass to Paulo. Okay.
Yes, yes, please, Paulo. Mr. Paulo.
Thank you very
Polício.
much.
Again, thank you very much again, Rosario. Paulo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today for this so nice invitation. My name is Paulo Polício, and I want to apologize because after my presentation, I'll have to leave this webinar, and I'm so sorry for doing it, but I have another meeting in Zoom. You know how we are living today. We are all going through different Zoom rooms. So my name is Paulo Polício. I'm a psychologist. Currently, I'm the executive director of APF, and APF is the Portuguese Family Planning Association. And I will share now my screen with you. And I hope you can see it now. So I was asked to present this project, and its name is For Children, Improving Responses to Sexual Abuse Victims. This topic, this problem of child sexual abuse is something that we in APF, we really think that must be addressed in a different way, because as Shona has said before, sometimes what children get after the disclosure of sexual abuse is even worse than the abuse itself, because we are not working in a coordinated way and we really must change the situation. So this project has the funding of the EA grants in Portugal. And very briefly, I would like to present what is APF. APF is the Portuguese Family Planning Association. It is an NGO established in 1967. It's a member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation, and its mission is to help people to make free and informed choices regarding their sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also to promote positive parenting. In the last few years, we have been working extensively in some manifestations of gender-based violence, like trafficking in human beings, like female genital mutilation, early and forced marriages, and so on. And because we are all over Portugal, we have 6 regional branches, and we have a close relationship with the communities we are working in. We realized that child sexual abuse is a huge problem in Portugal, because children, the young children and young victims don't find proper responses by the community. So probably we all know that according to the Council of Europe, 1 in 5 children is a victim of child sexual abuse, and the impact of child sexual abuse doesn't stay in childhood. Sometimes it impacts the whole people's lives. So taking into consideration its impact and also these numbers, these prevalence and these incidence rates, we must look at child sexual abuse as a public health issue. So it's not about justice, it's also about health, and it's about a lot of other sectors who must work and who must intervene in these situations, but must do it under a coordinated way, under a specific model. So in Portugal, we have ratified the Lanzarote Convention in 2012 that stipulates that children and young people are entitled to child-friendly justice and specific and specialized interventions. And we found out that, like Shauna mentioned before, Barnahus is known by its importance and as a good practice providing responses to sexual abuse victims. So, at least in Portugal, when people think about child sexual abuse, we think about justice. And we believe that what children need is a good response regarding justice and the child-friendly justice. And it's absolutely okay because, of course, we are talking about a crime and this is a justice matter, and justice is crucial when we are talking about child sexual abuse. But it's also a matter of health, as I was telling you, of therapy, protection, education, community, and so on. And we must understand that it's about the children that were sexually abused, but it's also about the non-offending family members that need help and need all these services and all these sectors to come together and to provide responses that make sense to that family and that child needs. And what happens today in Portugal, what we are realizing is that when some situation is known, like when a child discloses the sexual abuse, what happens, if we are lucky, is that the child will benefit from justice and will go to the therapist's office. And working in child sexual abuse is much more than that. It's also about thinking that if we don't work with the family, and if the child gets home and, for instance, his or her mother will tell him that he must change his testimonial, so maybe we'll lose the case, even in terms of justice. So all these sectors must come together with common goals, making different things, but having a collaboration, having real interagency between themselves. So this project comes from this background, and the first step of establishing this project was finding the right partners. So we have here the National Commission, the Judiciary Police, the Center for Judiciary Studies, the National Institute of Forensic Medicine, the Council of the Baltic Sea States, which has a consultancy role in this project, and Barnahale. Barnahale is the Save the Children Iceland, and they are our partners because we believe that considering a project in child sexual abuse, we must consider the prevention, because it makes part of a systemic and more complete social response to this problem. So, and what are our goals? Our goals are basically to contribute to the protection of children and young victims, to promote a more child-friendly justice, and to development of a specialized intervention in child sexual abuse. And what are the activities? We are still going through this project. It will end next April. And as Shauna said, there are two absolutely crucial steps, which are the feasibility analysis and the roadmap. We have already gone through the feasibility analysis, which has allowed us to understand what is really our ground, what is really the situation in Portugal regarding the Barnahus standards. Where are we right now? We also had a study visit to Barnahus, Iceland, to understand how the project, how do the Barnahus works. And we are going through the roadmap. We are trying to see how we can implement Barnahus in Portugal, taking into consideration our context in this moment. And at the end of the project, we are having a seminar to share with the main stakeholders the results and the conclusions, recommendations of this project. And this is also an advocacy action because we want to have the support of these stakeholders for the implementation. So I would like to share with you some of our findings, and in our findings we have challenges and we also have opportunities. Sometimes we only look at the challenges because it's easy to get overwhelmed and to get burdened thinking about what we don't have, but actually we also found out that we have opportunities for the implementation. So, of course, the first challenge is the lack of an intervention model, and there are no guidelines regarding interagency and multidisciplinarity, which means that all over Portugal, there is a huge diversity of practices and procedures, and some of them contribute to re-traumatize the children and young people victims of child sexual abuse. There are an absence of guidelines regarding the work and the therapeutic work with the victims of child sexual abuse. As I told you, I'm a psychologist, and the College of Psychologists in Portugal has no guidelines about how to work with these children. There is a general lack of training in professionals, health professionals, education professionals, and people sometimes are very sensitive about this issue, but they really don't know how to act and what is better. And sometimes they start doing the work of another actors. And one example is when people coming from protection services or from therapy do or try to do investigation of child sexual abuse because they want to know what happened. And with these kind of actions, sometimes sometimes we lose the cases in terms of justice. And there is a lack of awareness regarding the importance of a specialized intervention. And of course, and because we are talking in Portugal, but maybe it's the same everywhere, of course, we struggle with funding for the implementation. Talking about opportunities, well, the first opportunity is a general agreement among all partners about the importance of Barnahus and about the importance of having a coordinated response to protect children. In our law, we find a lot of provisions to prevent re-victimization that we can use to justify and to implement a pilot project, for instance. We have also an excellent legal basis on victim protection. Well, actually, we find out that in terms of legislation, we have a very good legal basis. And actually, this is what happens in Portugal. We are very good legislating. Sometimes our problem is about the implementation. So we have this excellent legal basis we can use to support the Barnahus. And apparently there is an absence of obstacles regarding interagency case management, which is crucial, as Shona has explained to us previously, in a Barnahus model. And we also have a legal basis for avoiding repetitive interviews. And regarding this specific topic, I would like to highlight that a few years ago in 2013, we had a research in Portugal showing that a child who is sexually abused must tell his or her story for 8 times before different people with different purposes, and some of these interviews are absolutely not necessary, and this is one of the things we would like to change. And what about what comes next? as you can see, we are still on the way. This is a work in progress. We are going through the roadmap for implementation, understanding what are our milestones, where do we want to be in the next few months. We are organizing this seminar and thinking about the stakeholders we must have in this seminar. And of course, our goal was is to have a Barnaús pilot in Portugal, because we are discussing the legal basis, the social context, the coordination, the interagency. We are starting to have protocols between partners, but we need a pilot to really understand what results and what doesn't result in our context. So, and that's all. Thank you so much for listening to me. And you can find here my contacts if you need to reach me for some reason. And obrigado, which is the Portuguese word for thank you.
Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Paulo Felicia. I think it's very, very inspiring as well to see a dynamic process in another context, in a different context, where maybe we can think that a Barnaús is not feasible. So I think that this your intervention also pointed out of the importance of the cooperation among stakeholders, but also between public institution and NGO. I think it's a very, very important thing to consider civil society as part of this process. And also, thank you for pointing out challenges, but also opportunities. We know very well that we have very valuable professionals and services and social workers that are, you know, putting a lot of effort every day on this. So we have to build on these competencies and this value, whatever we can think for the future. But thank you. We are very much looking forward to see this pilot starting in Portugal and eventually also continue this exchange among countries on what we are going to implement. Thank you, Paulo, and I will give the floor gladly to José Matos. He has a degree in law from the Lisbon University, and he's currently the coordinator of the investigation of sexual crime section of the Lisbon Directorate of the Judiciary Police. Very, very interesting to have also your perspective, José, and we are really very, very glad that you could be with us today. You have the floor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I don't know, I have a little problem. Good afternoon. My name is José Matos, and I am the coordinator of the section for the investigation of sexual crimes of the Lisbon Department of the Police Judiciária. I apologize for my poor and difficult English, so I'm going to read a little text and try that you understand.
Mr. Matos,
sorry, I think you have the last slide probably, so you have to put on the first page. Yeah, no problem at all.
Start. Oh, that's right. So I'm talking about not about the Barnaús, but what we are doing now before the Barnaús are in regular establishment in Portugal. So here in Polícia Judiciária, in the section of the sexual crimes, as the name indicates, we are a section specialized in the investigation of physical offenses, sexual offenses, either against adults or children. As for online sexual offenses, mainly child pornography, they are investigated in the section of the cybercrime unity. Currently, we have around 400 sexual crimes under investigation, 75% of which are related to child abuse. besides the regular daily service of the section, we have a prevention service created to deal with the urgent situations, which operates uninterruptedly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This prevention service is composed by 4 investigators, a department chief, and 3 inspectors, and they act immediately when there are alarming situations of abuse, in which is possible to collect material and biological evidence, and especially when the safety of the victim is at stake. Especially in the case of child abuse, where the abuser is usually related to the victim or close to them, it's necessary to act immediately in order to avoid the repetition of the abuse. During the investigation and the proceedings, all the victims of a crime of sexual nature in Portugal are considered by law vulnerable victims, and because of that, they have special rights, namely the right to be heard, interviewed in an informal and reserved environment in order to avoid pressures and mainly to avoid secondary or repeated victimization. In Portugal, the Judiciary Police has created interview rooms with cozy spaces that facilitate the emotional stabilization of the victims by ensuring their comfort and safety, as well as their privacy and the confidentiality of the content of their statements. These rooms, you see the room here in Lisbon, these rooms allow the recording and sound and image, so that the statements, if necessary, can be visualized by the judicial authorities. Indeed, more than the victim's words, the emotions and the non-verbal language are very important for the credibility and the assessment of what happened. These rooms, specifically created for interviewing victims, allow them to feel more comfortable and relaxed to report the abuse they have suffered than if they were interviewed or heard in the typical police facilities or in a courtroom. There, they are a cozy environment in the presence of only one investigator. This investigator must have specific training in interviewing vulnerable victims, especially children. This aspect of training is very important to us. Therefore, any investigator from the sex crimes investigation section receives specific training both in interviewing vulnerable victims and in questioning sex offenders. As for interviewing victims, investigators are trained in cognitive interviewing, which basically consists in a series of techniques to work on victims' memory when taking testimony, while respecting their age and cognitive development. They are also trained in the use of auxiliary materials for interviewing the child, such as the anatomically correct dolls and the pre-draw anatomy, understanding the language used by the child to name the parts of the body and the place where the abuse was perpetrated. The trained investigator will then capitalize on the conditions that those spaces provide. He or she should start by talking to the children about the proceedings, establishing a relationship of empathy and closeness with the child, which should make it easier for the victims to tell the story of the abuse they have suffered. It's important to refer that in Portugal, there is possibly to do the so-called declarations for future memory. In these cases, judicial authorities have the possibility to come to these child-friendly rooms and record audio and video declarations, which can be used during trial, avoid the children having to do to court to make declarations in front of strangers, which is always a traumatic situation of secondary or repeated victimization. Here in our department, we have had some examples of success of this procedure. Finally, it is important to mention that the specificity of this type of criminality, namely child abuse, imposes on investigators concerns that go far behind the mere gathering of evidence. They also include the duty to safeguard the health and the protection of the victims, which requires the articulation of the investigation with several specific entities, such as the Commissions for the Protection of Children and Young People, the hospitals, the National Forensic Medicine, the Social Service Emergency Line, among many others. We can state that the investigation of a sexual nature crime implies the action of a true multidisciplinary team, with several knowledge are mixed in the interests of the child and the discovery of the truth. The path towards a true protection of children victims of crime is long and challenging. However, through small steps such as specialized training and multidisciplinary cooperation, change is within our reach. I apologize my English, but thank you. For my part, it's everything. I leave here my contacts for any request from you. And thank you and good afternoon to all.
Thank you very much, Jose. I think your English was perfect.
No, I'm very nervous and my English is very poor. So
no problem. I think it was perfectly understandable, and we appreciated your presentation, which I would connect directly to the opportunity that you have in Portugal. Like it seems that also the police has a pretty advanced system that can be for sure valued by the system that you are putting in place. So thank you very much again to our Portuguese friends. We are really following with attention your experience in Portugal as an inspiring and a model that we would like to be informed with. We have a lot of friends. I was looking at the participants list, a lot of friends and colleagues from many countries, of the world, I would say. We have also our friend from the International Social Service from different countries. We have and from Cabo Verde, we have the ministry from Cabo Verde also attending our seminar. So thank you very much for being with us. So it's beyond really the border of Europe that we are discussing, and we are having this conversation. Let me also remind you before the last speaker and then a short first session of question and answer. The project eProtect is led by the Law and Internet Foundation together with CRPE from Romania and CERC, Southeast European Research Center in Greece. The Ministry of Justice in Italy is also participating, and of course also DCI, Defense for Children, International Italy is part of this endeavor and this adventure, I would say. So I don't know if everybody will have the possibility to express themselves, but we consider this seminar as a starting point really for an exchange that can continue over time. And we have another experience from Bulgaria. We have Mr. Lazar Atmatsov. He's a social worker in Bulgaria. Currently, he's a philosophy teacher. We need a lot of philosophy, of course, in order to address this very complex issue. He has 10 years of experience as a social worker, and since 2012, he's part of the team trained for carrying out interviews with children in blue rooms in Bulgaria. He also a PhD in child age psychology. So very much interested in understanding more about this blue room in Bulgaria and your indication about what has been done in your country. Thank you. You have the floor, Lazar.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see your
Yes,
presentation.
okay. Before I start to talk about the Blue Room in Bulgaria, I would like to tell you more information. And the Blue Room is a specialized facility for interviewing of a child, the preparation of the child for the forthcoming proceedings is done by professionals specialized trained to that purpose. The work with the child is performed following a specialized methodology for age-appropriate preparation of children. The specialized premises allow the interview of the child to be conducted in a child-friendly environment in the presence of all participants required at the relevant criminal proceeding stage. The eye contact between the child and the rest of participants, including the preparator, is avoided by using communications technology. They make it possible to make a recording of the interview, which then may be used for the purpose of the proceedings by the participant at different stage in order to reduce the number of interviews held with the child and the risk of having to repeat some information in front of the different participants in the proceedings. The child and the interviewer are in a specially equipped room, separated by a one-way mirror from the room where participants at the relevant stage in the proceedings are. The people behind the mirror could ask questions to the child through the interview, who is equipped with earphones and a microphone, just like me. The environment is child-friendly, and the doors between the hearing room and the other room are soundproofed. The entire room is a calm pastel colors. The furniture provides a comfortable stay with both younger and older children, like tables and chairs in two sizes, a sofa or armchair, soft carpet. The rooms are supplied with various aids and equipment for getting information from the child. For example, chalks, sheets of paper, regular dolls, other special dolls, which come to life once put on the hand, and the other, not directly available to the child, but used by specialists during the interview. And now I can show you my presentation to see. Wait a minute. Yeah. We can start with this information. Is it essential to prepare the child to get acquainted with the premises to find out who are participants in the procedure, to ask questions that will excite that same child?
Apologies for interrupting, Lazar. I think that if this is Benjamin from the technical support, I think that if you are moving the slides, we can't see them yet. We still are on the first slide.
First slide.
Yeah.
Yes. This is the first slide.
What we can see is the Blue Room practice in Bulgaria, but I think you were already at the next one, correct?
Yeah, okay. This one, and we are here.
We still do not see any change. If you want, I'm more than happy to share your presentation and you can tell me when to move on, if that's easier.
Try this one, no problem. In criminal cases, an interrogation is carried out, while in civil cases, a hearing takes place. Before the interview, is it important to make a 10-step methodology in order to test child skills and abilities to understanding the nature of the question? Check his speech development as well as whether he tries to give socially desirable answers without being confident in his own answers. Yes. Some of the questions are, what's my dog's name? This one, for instance, to check whether the child is trying to suggest his answers. What would you think if I told you my hair was red? It is important to determine whether the child is oriented in the time and space, whether one distinguishes between day and night, between past and upcoming events, front, back. The conversation usually begins with some cautious topics that will excite the child, for example, hobbies, free time, what he likes to do when is not at school, electronic games, and more.
Lazar, I do apologize, but we still cannot see the slides. So if you agree, I will share your presentation and you tell me when to do next, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, this one.
Okay.
Next. Yeah, this is the next slide. When talking about a traumatic topic, for example, sexual violence or fornication, the topic is delicately opened. If the child is not able to tell on their own, we can help him with some phrases. I received information that, or in previous conversation, you said that. Understand that it's difficult to talk about this topic, but it's important to clarify that happened. I was not there, so it's important to you tell me. Yeah, Benjamin, next slide, please. Yeah, this is the next slide. It is essential to summarize what the child has said so far. If I understood you correctly, you're talking about, for example, and the other phrase, it is important to use encouraging phrases such as, tell me more about this, what you say is important, what else happened? And it is advisable to ask open-ended questions that do not imply an answer with only yes or no. Instead of were you afraid? What were you feeling at the time? What thoughts were going through your head? Yeah, next, please. Yeah. Is it essential to avoid guiding questions containing the word or? Were you afraid or not? Did you see this or that? The correct question is, what did you see? Also, it is not allowed for the integrator to quality phenomenon as good or bad. What has happened to you is terrible, or what has happened to you is violence. It is more acceptable to say this should not happen to anyone, especially for children. Yeah. A situation in which the child has choose between one of the parents is strictly prohibited. Such questions, for example, are: do you want to live with your mom or with your dad? And how do you feel when you are with mom and when you're with your dad? Yes, Benjamin? Yeah, this is the last slide. This is the coordination of the social complex for social service for children and families based in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. This is the coordination.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Lazar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
No problem. We had some problem at the beginning, but then Benjamin Berkeley, who is strongly supporting our conference, and I haven't provided you all the technical indication, also aware of the fact that Benjamin is supporting the technical component of this conference. So thank you again, Benjamin. And thank you, Lazar, for remembering us that sometimes also with very good intention, we can make mistakes. So having standards and appropriate training for many professionals is not really a given thing, but is crucial in order to avoid re-traumatization. So I'm sure that the intervention solicited thoughts and reflection. I was wondering, Daya, my colleague Daya Wenke is looking at the chat if there are any questions at this stage before we split up for a short break.
Yes, Pippo, I have seen several participants asking for the slides to be shared, and I believe we can ensure everyone who's following us today that we will share the presentations with you after the meeting. Of course, we will convert back to the speakers before sharing them. And I have seen also a question from Maria Erini Capodistria, apologies for my pronunciation, regarding the concept of interagency cooperation and how that is relevant for dealing with these cases of child victims of crime. I believe Shona von Blixen has in fact already responded to it in the chat, clarifying that the interagency cooperation is an essential inherent part of Barnhu's model, but I'd invite you to open this this theme again for discussion, as it's really at the heart of our seminar today. And I've seen someone that raised her hand at the beginning. If I am not mistaken, it was Corina Dragan. So please take the floor and ask your questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Not sure if she's there, or maybe
she's not there.
Okay, okay, right. I don't know. Lorenza from Capo Verde, you wanted to say something? Just say hello. Okay.
Bom, I don't speak English. Eu falo português. Je parle portugais. Donc, Pippo, oui, Pippo pourra vous dire que je suis vraiment très contente.
Very happy to be here.
Là, je suis en contact avec le monsieur, la police judiciaire du Portugal. On est en train d'échanger.
We are already in touch with the
Parce que
Portuguese police.
On est en train de préparer aussi les installations des salles d'audition.
We are also preparing the listening room for hearing the child.
Et isto é uma grande, ça c'est une grande expérience pour nous, voir les salles que vous aviez, et ça va nous aider aussi à préparer ici au Cap-Vert.
And it's a great experience to be with you today in order to
Yeah.
inform also what we are
Merci
doing.
beaucoup à tous.
Thanks to you. Thank you very much to everybody, and thanks to Lorenza and our friends from Capo Verde to be with us today. If there are no questions, maybe we can reserve sometimes after the break. I will probably stop here for 10 minutes, I would say. Let's resume, 35, a bit less than 10 minutes, if it's okay. We have still some intervention from Italy and other countries. So I would suggest to be here at, let's make it 3:40, 10 minutes. Let's get 10 minutes. Thank you very much, and see you here at 3:40 sharp. Thank you very much. are back. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for the nice music. Just wait for everybody to be back from the coffee. Just when you are here, please switch on your video to know if we can resume. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we are having here now our friends and colleagues from Italy explaining the situation of the cooperation among key stakeholders in Italy, and especially an interesting project that is going on in Naples. We have Mrs. Isabella Mastropasqua. She's the director of Office 2nd at the Department of Juvenile and Community Justice of the Italian Ministry of Justice, and Mrs. Claudia De Luca, Juvenile Persecutor at the Juvenile Persecutor Office at the Court of Naples. Isabella and Claudia, you're very welcome here. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Isabella, you have the floor if you are here. Isabella? Yes, I can see you, Isabella. You're here, and you can switch on your microphone and turn on your microphone, and you have the floor. Thank you very much. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Sentite?
Yes, we can hear you, and everybody can switch on the translation. We have a valuable translation in the different languages.
Grazie. Intanto
thank you very much,
buonasera
Isabella.
a tutti e un saluto affettuoso a tutti i partecipanti e alla bellissima equipe di Defense for Children con cui abbiamo lavorato e continuiamo a lavorare in questo percorso che ha attivato una serie di scenari quasi inaspettati per quello che riguarda la costruzione di una politica territorialmente orientata a tutela dei minori che subiscono reati e sono vittime di reati di natura sessuale. In questa sessione di cui io dirò solo poche parole, presenteremo il lavoro in atto in un territorio molto complesso del nostro paese, che è la città di Napoli, una delle più grandi città del sud d'Italia e una città con tantissime bellezze, ma con tantissimi problemi, proprio sul fronte della tutela dei diritti dei minori, la povertà educativa di cui tanto si parla investe in particolare le regioni del sud, e quindi la città di Napoli è una delle città più esposte rispetto al presidio di una crescita delle giovani generazioni attenta prevalentemente ai loro diritti. Il progetto di cui vi parlerà in maniera più dettagliata la dottoressa De Luca, procuratrice presso il Tribunale per i minorenni di Napoli, è un progetto e a lei è affidata proprio la sua narrazione nel concreto, proprio perché è un progetto che vede una fruttuosa sinergia tra un ufficio centrale, quindi il Dipartimento per la Giustizia Minorile e di Comunità, e in particolare l'ufficio che si occupa proprio di prevenzione della devianza, è un ufficio territoriale. Il progetto su Napoli vede ricostruita una dimensione di sussidiarietà insieme verticale e orizzontale, che nel territorio vede la presenza da una parte del Dipartimento e dall'altra la sollecitazione a costruire presenze degli attori locali, quindi nella logica proprio della sussidiarietà orizzontale. Il progetto ha previsto, è ancora in corso, e prevede una faticosa messa a sistema delle potenzialità degli attori locali, dei diversi servizi, perché uno dei problemi più seri da affrontare nel nostro paese quando parliamo di attenzione ai diritti delle vittime minorenni è proprio quello del non disperdere le azioni che diversi soggetti mettono assieme, ma anzi farle convergere in una logica che è insieme di razionalizzazione delle risorse economiche, ma soprattutto delle risorse intellettuali, dei saperi. Quindi il progetto noi lo abbiamo denominato Protect Napoli, proprio per dare valore a questa pratica situata che noi ci auguriamo possa diventare una pratica esportabile in altri contesti e in altre realtà territoriali. Se questo è stato possibile, e cedo subito la parola alla dottoressa De Luca, lo dobbiamo proprio grazie alle sinergie che a partire dalla Procura si sono attivate per generare nel territorio attenzione ai diritti dei minori. Quindi io vi ringrazio per questo ascolto e do subito la parola alla collega Claudia De Luca, che sicuramente, oltre a parlare inglese meglio di me, vi spiegherà nel dettaglio la organizzazione più specifica del nostro progetto su Napoli.
Grazie Isabella, grazie mille. Thank you very much Isabella, and thank you also to have this support from really the central department that is very important in order for us to work on a specific territorial experiment, but with the hope that this can be mainstreamed also in other territories in Italy. So very important to have your support and your presence and your intellectual resources for our action. So thank you very much. And I give the floor to Mrs. Claudia De Luca, another very important partner, as Isabella already said. Claudia, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm here, but I'm not so important because, as you can see, I'm not able to activate the video. I don't know how it's possible, but I think you don't see me.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but I'm not able to activate the video on the PC. I'm trying to, but I don't know why.
If I could just intervene very quickly. Hello, this is Benjamin here once again. If you could just maybe check on the bottom of your Zoom screen where there's start video, there's a small arrow.
Well,
Do you see it?
No, I don't know it. I don't see it. Sorry.
Okay.
There's disactivation of video, audio, but I don't see any arrow.
Right next to the picture of the webcam, so next to your microphone button, there's the webcam button, and next to it is a small arrow.
It's just USB webcam. Choose the.
Yes. So did you select that?
Yeah.
Okay, then unfortunately, I think it's a problem with the USB connection.
Okay.
It doesn't recognize it. So unfortunately, we won't be able to see your video.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a problem for me. You just can hear me. Okay. So
Yes.
thank you, Pippo, and thank you everyone for listening to me and before for inviting me at this very interesting meeting, because I like very much the speeches of the speakers before me. They were really very interesting. My name is Claudia De Luca. I'm a public prosecutor at Juvenile Court of Naples. Today we are talking about examples of cooperation models to improve the safeguards of children victims of crime. But first of all, I have to say that in Italy, already the concept of victim does not exist at all. We speak of a person offended or damaged by the crime, but these are concepts that have a meaning always and only within a criminal proceeding in a repressive perspective, and only in relation to a fact punished by criminal law. So in general, and in my opinion, it's a pity, the culture of victim care is missing both inside and outside the trial. The proposed reform of the penal code introduced the concept of victim of crime by copying the definition given by Directive 2012-29. And this both to be able to legally recognize a role for the victim in the investigation and in the criminal process, and to be able to adapt the Italian system to that of other European countries where there is already a concept of victim. And for me, it's very important because we all understand that talking about victim makes possible to link that minor to the rights provided by the directive. We all know, as Isabella said, that there are some lacks in the national law that need to be fulfilled by protocols among the public and private institutions. The problem is how to give the minor the right protection in the right moment without prejudice to criminal investigations, which are fundamental to protect the victim finally and restore his serenity as well as his credibility. The problem is that in Italy, there isn't a single moment in which the minor victim of crime can be heard by different actors. And this can create many problems of various kinds. If the victim chooses to ask the police for help frequently or social services rarely, the police or social services will be the first to listen to his story and to report to the juvenile public prosecutor. But then the victim will be heard by the public prosecutor or by other police, judicial police delegated by him. And if there are investigations in coordination with the prosecutor's office for adults, for example, for a crime committed by minors and adults together, he will also be heard by the public prosecutor for adults and so on, too many times, really too many times. So the risk, as someone said before me, is that you can lose the trust of the victim and that your intervention can be in delay because that minor needs help in the moment he asks for it, not when you think he's convincing about his personal history. So what we have done and what we are doing with the help of Defense for Children. In the first step, we have taken part with Juvenile Justice Department of the Ministry of Justice, as Isabella Mastropasqua told us, in a European project aimed at promoting an efficient system of protection for victims and at the same time suggesting strategies for the further development of policies to protect the rights of victims in member states. As part of its activity, this office implemented in 2020 a website called Blue Project, dedicated to victims of crime, adults and minors, explaining the rights of the European Directive. The gap and mistrust that is created with the institutions that appear far from the minor victim of crime is really very dangerous, because being vulnerable subjects, the immediate takeover by the authorities responsible for various reasons for protection is really essential. The creation of a pact of trust between the victim and the institutions is very important, both to ensure that the victim can escape in the right time from a condition of violence, discomfort, or suffering, both to allow the successful outcome of the trial. But to do this, we know that it's necessary to be sure that you have placed the underage victim in the conditions of having well understood the situation in which he finds himself and the consequences of his taking charge by the authorities responsible for his protection, like police, social services of the ministry, territorial social services, reception centers, or judicial authority. So the project, and specifically the website, had the dual purpose. The first one is make itself known quickly by potential victims of crime and offer them a series of information necessary to understand how to protect themselves against the wrong they've suffered and how to prevent wrong behavior from repeating itself, and later on, which are their rights before, during, and after the trial. And the second step was to make itself known by potential actors of the protection system to create online an efficient cooperation space between public and private institutions that deal with the juvenile victim of crime, like magistrates, police, schools, social services, hospitals, like especially pediatricians, communities, through knowledge of the respective skills and professionalism in the territory and the exchange of information. I mean, this is really very important, useful for protecting the victim. We all know that timely and effective protection intervention before and during the criminal trial, and in the most times also after the trial, assumes too many priorities. And this is what we are working at with Defense for Children in this moment. A strong synergy between those who are part of public institutions and between public and private institutions, because we know that social partners are increasingly important due to the lack of public resources for the protection of minors. And the second one is the effective coordination of the respective interventions, even from a temporal point of view, referring to the exact moment in which each public or private subject must intervene. In Italy, there is no effective system of interinstitutional cooperation. There is no national regulation of this issue. So there is no public or private agency recognized by the state dealing with the victim of a crime, which coordinates the relevant interventions. And the national law did not identify a professional figure for the individual assessment of the needs of the victim of crime, and did not identify the moment in which it should be done. So there are some really lots of problems. As Isabella Mastropasqua told you, there are problems like lack of financial support, lack of stakeholder involvement and training for operators. Someone before me spoke about conversation ability. I agree, it's really, really important. The fact that the availability of victim support structures is not the same in each territory of Italy, and so the system of protection varies too much discretionally from territory to territory, because very different are the economic resources employed in the creation of systems and structures of assistance. And Isabella Mastropasqua told you that Naples is very poor. It's not a rich city, so the resources are really few. In Italy, there are many investigative protocols between judicial offices that aim to ensure that the autonomy of each office does not correspond to the lack of exchange of information, but it's clear that compliance with the protocol is entrusted to the diligence and sensitivity of the individual public prosecutor, so it's not good. In practice, local coordination does not always work, and it's a pity after all, because there are exploitable resources on many territories, so it's necessary to put them together. And here comes the second step of the project we are working at with Defense for Children and the Justice Department. The goal is to create a net of institutional and private actors during the proceeding in order to take charge of the minor victim who needs help and to report the conditions in which he finds himself, avoiding traumatization and secondary victimization. I think it's very important to find the same place. So we don't have a Barnhouse experience. I would like to visit one because it would be really very useful also for our Italian experience. I agree with all the people said before me said that the child must feel safe. And so he doesn't have to move from a place to a place, from a place to another to get listened by the actors. And we are trying to create a sort of barn house, but it has too much with our legal system, and so it could take. It's not really easy, and it takes time. So the idea for now is to use the barn house model to make a net without a physical place. Can you listen to me? Yeah, without a physical place for now, but creating a good communication among the stakeholders. First of all, we try to make a roadmap of the territories and to identify who are the subjects who have to take charge of the victims of crime and that can hear them. We understood that these subjects are too many and they have often complementary and overlapping skills. These subjects don't know each other or are not able to work together. Some of these subjects don't know how to refer to juvenile prosecutor. Most of them needs training. It would be important to organize courses to explain to the actors which are the indicators of suffering of the victim of crime and what to do. Some of them have to learn to recognize a minor as a victim of crime. I'm thinking about schools and pediatricians, to refer to the juvenile prosecutor in time to guarantee his intervention. So we have identified for each actor the strengths and the limits of his action to understand how to improve his skills and how to facilitate the communication. In the next step, we will try to listen to the institutional private actors to understand how to organize a net among them in order to protect the minor in agreement with the judicial authority that must carry out the investigations on his case. We know it's a really difficult challenge because each interlocutor claims his autonomy and competence, but I'm sure we will make it. So this is for the now from Italy. So thank you for your patience, for your attention, and thank you most for your speeches, for your experiences. Thank you very much. Sorry for the video.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Very straightforward, even very effective without the video. Next time we will see you. Okay. Thanks a lot, and we are very glad to be able to share with you this, pioneering experience in Naples and with the department. Let me also say hello to our friends from Hong Kong. We have our friend from International Social Service Hong Kong, and also International Social Service from Lebanon. Very glad to have you here. I don't know what time is there, but it's nice to have you here.
It's very late, right? So probably I have to leave. It's sleeping. It's only 12.
Okay, thank you, Iris. Thank you for being with us. Yes, I will proceed. We have now Mariama Diallo as a child justice expert, and she's holding the position of regional manager for the Access to Justice program of Terre des Hommes at the moment. She's a colleague and friend, and I'm very happy she's going to talk about the crucial element in addressing victims of crime from a child rights perspective, which is the participation of children. It's all about meaningful and sensitive participation. So how participation of children can support successful multidisciplinary cooperation. We are used to consider, of course, the child as a victim, but the children can be also actors, and very important and crucial actors in determining appropriate solution. Mariama, we are looking forward to hearing your presentation. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, people. Thank you to Defense for Children, Italy, and the partnership to actually give us the opportunity to talk about indeed this, what we believe very key topic of child participation in Barnahus. So I'm now sharing my screen. So if you could just confirm that you can see it and then also mention. Yes, exactly. Then, and if I move like this, you can see it, right? Yes. Just checking, so then it was Benjamin later to have to intervene. So yeah, thank you for this nice presentation. I'm really pleased and very, very interested in the previous in the previous talks from Portugal, Italy, from Bulgaria, because indeed, well, I've been listening very attentively and seeing how actually I can bring this topic of child participation that seems a little bit obvious in a Barnahus setting when we talk about working directly with children, but as you will see in my presentation, is not something that is extremely straightforward. So as people mentioned, I work for Terre des Hommes based in Hungary. It's a regional office for Europe. We are very active in Europe, in particular in access to justice program. We also have migration program, but we work to enhance the situation of children that are victims, children that are suspects or accused of crime. And we actually have developed a few methodologies on child participation, and we work a lot also on child safeguarding. So to make sure that our approaches of professionals actually are in line with the rights of children. We work on very procedural safeguard, from individual needs assessment of children, on restorative justice, legal assistance, among the so many topics. And in one key aspect for us too is the work with child victims, in particular in the Promise Network. Terre des Hommes is also a member of the Promise Network. And there we actually are an expert. We don't have ourselves a Barnahus, but we actually participate in collaboration with Barnahus Center to think a bit about methodologies on child participation. So what do we mean when we talk about child participation in Barnahus? And here how do we actually ground it on? Well, very easy, and this was very nicely presented earlier by Shona. We actually believe that any child that is involved with a Barnahus has the right to express their views, and they have their views must be given due weight at an individual and collective level. So this is Barnahus Quality Standard number 1, 2, and this is really what we want to address today, but to actually also distinguish.
Mariama, I think we have a problem with your microphone. It's off at the moment.
Yeah, you know what happened? I had all your videos on top of my presentation, and now I'm back. So I need to move you to the side. That's it. So in here we need to distinguish that we are not talking about the participation of children to actually interview them in the criminal proceeding, which is actually one of the procedural safeguards, but we are actually talking about the participation of children in the process, more generally speaking, and in the Barnahus service. So that will also distinguish a bit, for instance, with the presentation we heard from Bulgaria, what kind of question to ask to the child as part of the legal proceeding. So in fact, we know that it's actually, and we have heard it quite a bit since the beginning of this conference, that there are many challenges that relate to having children expressing their views. And we know that to address this, to give actually a meaningfulness to child participation, to actually implement child participation, we need to think of what are the challenges that we want to overcome. When we discuss with Barnahus services, we actually encounter, or people that are willing to implement Barnahus, we have often feedback that, yeah, you know, but if we really ask too much the child about how the process was for them, it actually will contribute to something we are trying to avoid, is re-victimization.
There is also sometimes an attitude, a bit of a resistance to child participation, more about an overprotective attitude from professionals, from families, very legitimate. And also it can be linked to the culture in the country, which is not very common to actually ask their children about their opinions and their views. Sometimes staff are not particularly trained enough to actually know how they can actually implement child participation methodologies, how to ask the questions. And also we see quite a lot of insufficient information provided to the child about their rights, about the process. And very often, or in several cases, we see that children's consent are not systematically sought. So this is obviously not saying that in Banahus this doesn't happen. Those are actually challenges related to involving really children in expressing their views. And those are actually some of the feedback received from participants to a survey that I actually will share with you in a few minutes. Especially, we are working quite a bit with Bulgaria, SAPI. So I was here happy to hear also about the Blue Rooms today. We developed together with SAPI as part of the Promise 3 project, child participation methodology in case management. So this will be available in March 22. So please stay tuned. It's going to be available very soon. And it's going to help Banahus centers to think a bit about how we can really implement child participation. We are also working together with CBSS with co-designing a digital application for children to actually understand their journey throughout Banahus. And we are now really developing a demo, a prototype application using a tablet or a phone that will actually make the child feel better through the process. And as part of the promise, and this is a bit at the core of what we also do, there is this working group on child participation led by CBSS. TDH is a member, Terre des Hommes. And in this working group, we actually study how we can talk about what we mentioned, a participatory culture in Banahus. So what we did, we actually look at two ways. We first wanted to do a mapping of how child participation works today in current Banahus, who is actually implementing child participation and how they do it. But we also reached out to Dr. Laura Lundy, an expert on child participation, to explore how child participation is today embedded in Banahus. So just a bit of a refresher for some that are not so much familiar with the Lundy model, which is a rights-based participation model. This is a model that actually provides a pathway to help conceptualizing Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is really the core article in this case, together with Article 13 for children the right to receive information. And it actually focuses on 4 distinct interrelated elements, which are space, where we mean actually that we need to provide a safe and inclusive space for children to express their views. It's about voice, providing information and support to children to express their views. It's about audience, who is there to ensure that children's views are communicated to someone who has the responsibility to listen to them. And it's about influence, which is about giving due weight and to the voice of children, and that children to actually be able to receive feedback on what they share with the professionals. So here, I mean, Shauna a bit earlier showed these beautiful visuals that have been developed as part of Promise. And you can see a bit, this is a visual that was actually developed for the child participation in Banahus. And below you find a link to the actual document that I'm mentioning, the mapping and the paper that they developed together with Dr. Laura Lundy. So I really invite the participant to go and click on this link because it's actually quite interesting to have more detailed information. So I would like to now actually share with you a bit some of the results of the mapping to contextualize a bit and to be a little bit more concrete. We wanted to do this mapping to understand how child participation was working. So we conducted at the end of December 2020, early 2021, a survey in the Promise Network, where actually we reached out to Banahus services to ask a series of questions to understand the situation, and we received 10 responses. out of this, we could say that actually there were at least 80% that had child participation strategies methodology. We give an indication that probably the one that responded had more familiarity with child participation. That we could see that children's voices were really sought at several stages of the process, at governance of the Barnahus, in the 4 houses of the Barnahus, but also to evaluate performance. But there was definitely a prevalence of child participation during physical health examinations and forensic interviews. And what was interesting is what methodologies were not always written as such, but it didn't mean that there was no practices in child participation. So how were the children really involved in practice? So to analyze actually how do we design the survey and how we analyze the data, we used the Laura Lundy model with the space, influence, audience, and voice to really observe how child participation happens in practice. So in relation to the space, this is about asking children's opinion about the way that the Barnahus is actually accessed. So what we got the feedback is it's about having an easy access so that, for instance, short distance in the service, so the child doesn't have to walk too far to go from one service to another. It's having a dedicated space, room area, not being in the courts, and that would not also be refused by the court. So there could be here some legal hinders in the prosecution level. And also to be able to have waiting room that is easily accessible. It's about stress reducing equipment. So it's about some Barnahus have developed a mascot that actually accompanies the child, fidget toys. It's about having internet access. It's about having creative corners or having also books that actually the child can actually read to actually be less anxious in the process. This space is also about obviously a child-centered setting. We think often of the physical space. This is about a furniture, not just putting a big sofa for small children. This is child-sized furniture. This is about rooms designed according to the age group. It's about having waiting area for children and adolescents that are designed in participation with children, so thought together with children and young people. So we ask their opinion about how would you like that space to look like. It's about providing refreshments, natural lights versus artificial, very white hospital-looking lights. And this space is also about building confidence so that actually the child will feel safety goes with also feeling confidence. And there was some concrete example provided, such as putting a name tag. So do we know who the child is talking to? What is their name of the person, of the professional talking to them? And also talking with professionals that are trained to talk with children. This was about space. What did they say when we were asking them about voice? So here, what was referred to was often about the training of the staff to communicate. This was about child-friendly communication. It was also about actually bringing them, doing a tour of the Barnahus. Recently talking with Bulgaria, there is never a child that comes and that right away goes into a service, but first they go through all the different Barnahus space so that they get familiar with the actual space. It's about having available for them child-friendly leaflets. And also maybe when they are visited at home, if it's possible to actually conduct them. So the child has less of a distinction between this Barnahus space and its home. The voice of children and the children's views were also expressed in some cases through a children and youth board officially set up to advise the governance body of Barnahus, and where they could actually make sure that the voices of children were heard and they were there to advise. Sometimes there were evaluation questionnaires. There are evaluation questionnaires. They are not systematic. There could be a locked box where actually anonymously children could actually put information and to provide a feedback. And also other more maybe what could happen more often is that recorded interviews with children to avoid repeating their story, preparing the child, that is really essential. This is about sharing information about the process, really walking the child through the whole process and discussing this with them and involving them actively in the consultation process. When we ask them about audience, this was really linked to the fact of who is actually listening to the child, who is in contact with the child. So this was actually recognized by the Barnahus Center as a very key element. But today there was actually limited capacity building programs for the staff in Barnahus on child participation. Only 40% of them had conducted trainings, and in fact mostly were external trainings. So they were not internal trainings independent of funded projects from external donors, but they were definitely planning this training on child participation in order to build the skills of their staff to better understand how they can ask the opinion of the children. What was interesting though is that from all the trainings, it was very multidisciplinary as the theme of today. Participated psychologists, social workers, police officers, managers, lawyers, therapists, to actually really discuss about how we can make it more making it work in practice. And again, this youth and children boards that happen in some countries, which actually is there, which is a collective way of expressing the children's views, and to see how to communicate about children's views with the professionals. And in terms of the last aspect is about influence. This was also agreed by all the respondents, the Barnahus services, that this was definitely an area that needs to be improved, because this was really about accountability of the service. How can the feedback from children make the service be accountable in a good way for the service that they are providing to children? So there were some interesting examples shared. For instance, again, this youth board or children board that was actively involved in providing feedback, children involved in drafting the annual report of the Barnahus service, and also maybe having an external expert on child participation coming to the Barnahus service and analyzing a bit how improvement could be made at different levels. And last but not least, we were talking about information material. What information is there for children, professional families? And it was available for children. That is like 60% of respondents had information available. And for families was over 80% and 70% for professionals. This came in a variety of formats. It really went from information leaflets, from brochures, from YouTube videos that were made by children, from videos made by professionals themselves, a website, guides, briefings to the staff. There was in some places a library to the family, for the families to actually consult literature about questions around victims. So it was really, there's a lot of information that has been provided, but it wasn't systematically in all the centers. And the different themes covered were also ranging through the various rooms, from child protection, investigation processes, emotional well-being, the Barnahus unit itself, forensic psychology. So it was really about the different aspects that touches Barnahus. So this is what I wanted to share with you today, to actually conclude that we talk a lot, especially in our field, about key stakeholders, but the child is a key stakeholder at all stages of the process. This means that from the design of the Barnahus service to the implementation of the service to the evaluation of the service, it is very key to make sure that children can be involved in a meaningful way. We think that child participation can lead to real service improvement and sustainability of the service. Shona earlier on referred to that, to actually key successes and how to make it sustainable. For us, child participation is an element, and for Barnahus services that are considering being set up, it's something to be considered at the right beginning, already now, when you're thinking about all the different aspects of what is needed to try to consolidate a group of children that could actually provide some inputs. What is very interesting and what for us was a really interesting finding was that actually children, and we had recently again an example from Bulgaria, they were more asked about their feelings in Barnahus more than about their opinions. So child participation is also asking about children's opinions, children's views. And in that way, if we really implement a proper strategy of child participation, we have better understanding. That means that all the interdisciplinary professionals involved can actually provide a stronger service to them. And of course, last but not least, this is also about children feeling valued. Their voice matters. It's about feeling empowered. It's about being able, when you can, as a child, participate in an annual report exercise to provide feedback and evaluation is actually something that gives meaning. We're not just quickly consulting children, but we're actually involving them in a meaningful process. And I would like to conclude with just a quote from a Serbian child that we actually involved in a consultation with 40 children to influence the EC strategy on the rights of the child 2 years ago. And this is policy brief that we call Just with Children. And they were mentioning, when asked about what child-friendly justice is, they mentioned a justice system where children are informed about their rights, where they know what they can expect, a system where adults are actually interested in involving children in the decision-making process. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariama. I think it's a very vital and crucial component of what we are discussing here. And again, I mean, when we are getting closer to children, considering them not just like victim, but as active, participants in any solution that we can find for them and with them, I think we can really qualify our discussion and doing cultural steps towards, the principles of the convention. So thank you very much for this important contribution. I think that we are having now a couple or 2 or 3 questions. A pool was prepared by our colleagues, and they are very, very simple questions, but we wanted to interact with you, at least in a minimal way. I'm not sure if Gabriella can send it.
Yes, it's Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Voila.
We have pool 1. Is there a Barnhouse, Blue Room, or comparable interagency and multidisciplinary cooperation model for child victims of crime in the city or region where you work? You can decide one of the 2 questions, yes or no. Okay. I'm not sure if we are going to see the result of the poll now or after the 3 questions.
We are still waiting a bit because 37 people have answered, 41 now, so it's taking a bit.
Someone has closed the pool by mistake.
I see. They will have to wait until it is relaunched. So I think it might be a bit too late for that.
Okay. I see that also that the chat is flying, I mean, with some questions, and after I will ask Daya to resume, the various issues that were raised on the chat without having the pretension to provide a response, but surely to consider all the point.
People, we can now share the response from poll 1 if you want. Yeah.
Go on, Benjamin. Thank you. Okay, we have 64% say no, 36% say yes. And we can shift to pool number 2. If yes, are you largely satisfied with the way it works? Well, evidently, this is just for the people who said yes. while we are waiting, yes. No is 54% and yes is 46% on the satisfaction with the available service. And the third pool is if no, would you like to see such a cooperation model become active in the city or region where you work? Very simple questions, just more than question teaser, actually, to let us also reflect on the difficulty or the opportunities that we are having in our territory to establish something based on this standard and this model. Well, I would say that everybody is pretty in line in appreciating the possibility for such a cooperation model to be established in their territory, 96% and 4%. Okay, thank you very much. Of course, there are some materials and analysis that were already done from experience in various countries, and we hope it will be possible for us to share with you some relevant documentation also on the various experience. Our friend from Promise have already a quite a comprehensive perspective on the situation of Barnow's model or similar model around Europe. I would proceed. We are, it's 4:30. We still have two contribution to our conversation, and we would like to leave some space for questions. I would give the floor to Snezana Krumova, which is the coordinator of the eProtect 2 project from Law and Internet Foundation, which is the leading agency for this project that we thank for the opportunity. So please, Snezana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being here today. It's really a pleasure for me to be part of the second international workshop and to be so successful and to having people from across the world. I'm happy to share with you our gamification platform. I'll try to be as brief as possible because I know that we need some time for questions at the end and to wrap up. The gamification platform is up and running since October 2021. And it's the most prominent output under the umbrella of eProtect 2 project. The entire consortium is very and really proud of this accomplishment, as it was a really challenging and time-consuming task. You can imagine, and once you enter to try it out. The eProtect gamification platform actually has been created with the purpose of enhancing experts' capacity in working with child victims of crime. In particular, by providing the relevant professionals with a more practice-oriented approach in terms of the way they should apply the individual needs assessment methodology, which has been developed under the first phase of the project. The eProtect gamification platform is actually a simulation game which constitutes educational animations regarding the child victims of crime, which involves interactive storyboards. I will show you the gamification in a bit, which are relatively easy to navigate, and it provides with relatively easy to comprehend information as well. The game will provide you with 3 different scenarios that you can choose from: online grooming, trafficking for sexual exploitation, and domestic violence. Each of them is associated with a different role, respectively police officer, lawyer, and a social worker. Of course, before start playing, you have information that you are supposed to read to familiarize yourself with each of the scenarios, and you can choose one of them. Of course, you can always go back and choose another one if you're not happy with the scenario or with the role that you have chosen. You're going to respond to approximately 20 questions per each scenario. We have tried not to go beyond borders in terms of overwhelming amount of questionnaires, not to also, let's say, bore the participants. You'll be able to choose from 3 possible answers. And upon answering the question, you're provided with a simple explanation why, respectively, this is the correct or misleading or wrong answer. Upon answering, you're given also a point. Respectively, for correct answer, you're given 5 points. For misleading answer, you're provided with 2 points and 0 points for wrong answer. Now I'll share my screen so that you can see the gamification platform. It's available. I hope that you can see my screen right now. I believe Gabriela shared with the chat the Child Protect platform itself. I want to start here so that you can see where you can navigate it from. You go to childprotect.eu. There is a play button. I believe you can see. Just let me know if you cannot see my
We can see it very well.
Yes, perfect. Thanks a lot for the confirmation. Then you click the play and then you can choose the scenario and start. I wouldn't play, let's say, a full scenario so that we don't waste a lot of time. You can see that you can see all the 3 scenarios here, scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3, respectively. You have the different rows. You can navigate to the read more button to see the full story, basically. We have tried to be as concise as possible in terms of details and not providing irrelevant information, respectively. I'll start with the first scenario so that it's easy to go ahead, and I'll just demonstrate a few questions. And then, of course, I would encourage all of our participants to go log in and try it out. You don't need to provide any information about yourself. You are not required to, let's say, log in with any Facebook or Gmail account or whatsoever. We try to be as privacy compliant as possible by avoiding any collection of data. At the end, of course, there is a brief feedback form, but they're just the 3 questions that you're supposed to fill out. And it's really important for us to figure out if it's really helpful and whether it has reflected actually the practice-orientated approach that we have managed to achieve. So basically, you can see we are the police officer. Which authority should you inform at first? Of course, you have read beforehand the scenario itself, and you can choose one of the respective answers. In that case, I'll just click one of those so that I demonstrate to you the explanation that comes up, which is the misleading answer. The psychological support, of course, will be of high importance with the particular case. However, Leila, the respective girl, will need other types of support as well, which cannot be provided by psychologists. And you put the next question button. Here is the second question. I just would like to show you that you can go to the information and navigation. If you feel that you haven't, let's say, read the full description carefully, or you need a bit more of the information again, you can reread it always. You can select a new scenario, you can restart this one, or go to the eProtect webpage. I think I can stop it here so that I don't, let's say, lose much more time and give the floor to the next speaker. Really, I would appreciate, the whole team actually will appreciate very much, even if you just go and try one of the scenarios, if you feel like sharing all of them. And of course, your feedback is very much appreciated. And of course, if you have some more, let's say, insights or feedback that you'd like to share, you can always send us an email. There's a contact form on the platform as well. And we would be more than happy to hear from you. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you very much, Snezana. I hope you will enjoy and try and provide feedback to this game. I think what we try to do with the project is really to create some tools that can easily familiarize, help the professional to familiarize with certain issues or adults in general. And yeah, this is an experimental platform that will value very much your feedback in order to be improved and eventually also articulated more. Thank you very much. And we have, as a last intervention before the question and answer, Alma Leshi. She is a chairwoman of the State Agency for the Rights and Protection of the Child from Albania. And she will let us know something about the state of play in Albania in terms of legislative reforms for the protection of children who are victims of crime. Alma, you have the floor. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be with you today, unfortunately not physically. As we see the situation, we need to increase our voice for protection of the children in Ukraine and all the Europe and all the world. And this is a good opportunity, in fact, to be together. What we are speaking today is for child protection and especially for the victims, when the children are the victims. I want to thank very much my colleagues for their presentation and for the models. Why not we can replay one of them in our country, in Albania, to promote or to build a Barna house model, which is more, let's say, more dedicated or more practical to our legislative system, and is a good opportunity to promote this as soon as possible, because this is the moment I think that Albania is ready to, let's say, to be in contact with one of the country of Europe, which is the best model, let's say, for the children as a Barna house. Because what I see is that most of my colleagues, they present the models of Barna house, which is very interesting because each of one was very, let's say, practical, but very specific for every country. This is what was very interesting for us. I want to present what is going to happen in Albania in the last years. We have done progressive legislative reforms for child protection, and especially for victims, when the children are victims, and how can they protect by our system and mechanism, and how it functions really in Albania. When I'm the last speaker, I want to be briefly and shortly, I want to share my presentation. Okay. Please, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
I think we can see the last slide. You have to put on.
Okay. Now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay. Child protection system in Albania is regulated by the law 18 of 2017 on the right and protection of the child, that provides for advisory and institutional coordinations, mechanism and structures for the right and protection of the child and central and local level in Albania. Which are the advisory institutions, mechanism, coordinations? We have a national councils for the right and protection of the child at the central level. We have cross-sectoral technical group at the municipalities of Albania, is 61 in Albania, or administrative units at the local level. We have now 300 administrative units for each municipality of Albania. The second are the structures for the right and protection of the child in central level, which are the first is the minister, who coordinates the work of issues in the rights and protection of the child. In fact, in Albania now we have two ministries. The one ministry is my ministry, which are Ministry of Health and Social Protections, and the second one is the ministry. Is a new ministry for children and for youth. Is dedicated only for children and youth. And finally, we have a new ministry. The second one is State Agency for the Rights and Protection of the Child, which I am the part of this agency, and we have other ministers responsible, which are responsible for coordinating in the field that they covers, which have the Ministry of Interior in Albania, Ministry of Justice in Albania, Ministry of Education in Albania, who has the responsibility and are a part of this mechanism for child protections in Albania. We have child protection structures at the local level, which are the municipalities, child protection units in the municipality, and child protection employees at administrative level. This is the organization, let's say, in macro of a system of child protection in Albania. Mechanism and structures at central and local level, they have the duty to cooperate and coordinate the work between them for the implementation of legislation and state policies on the rights and protection of the child. Coordinations of their activities on issues related to the rights and protection of the child is provided to the law, and procedures are determined by a decision of councils of ministers. Now we have the new law of child protection, but in the same time we have provided 13 DCMs, decision councils of ministers, who provide the system of child protection in Albania for all categories, and one of the categories are the child victims in Albania. Mechanism and structures of integrated system for the right protection of the child is regulated by the National Council on the Children's Rights Protections, who is established in 2011 in Albania, is an advisory body for the development, coordination, and protections, including justice, social services, education, health, cultures. This National Council comprises 9 members from governmental and non-governmental and independent institutions, members from NGOs. Children participate in the meeting of these national councils and as observers and other international organizations who operate in Albania. The Minister of Health and Social Protection is the authority in Albania responsible for coordinating, monitoring the progress, implementation of relevant policies, measures for enforcement of laws, national strategies, action plans for children, and international obligations. A state agency on the right of the child in Albania, established in 2011. As you see, we are, let's say, a new approach in Albania, just in a decade, let's say, just only 10 years, it's not more. Is an institution subordinated to the ministries responsible, that we are under the Ministry of Health and Protection in Albania, for coordinating the work of children's rights and the protection issues. State agency is responsible for coordinations of integrated child protection system pursued in national policies in Albania. The role of state agency is that it has the right to control the service quality of child protection structures, to analyze the needs for specific interventions in the area of child protections. At the local level, we have 2 units. Then we have child protection units in Albania and child protection workers. The child protection workers work under the child protection units, which are in each municipality of Albania. They are responsible for coordinations and provisions of child protection services, case management, in cooperation with a number of stakeholders from various and operating at the local level in Albania. In every municipality and administrative units with more than 3,000 children is on a cross-sectoral technical group for addressing child protection cases, which is established, composed, and representatives from the police, social services, education, health, and justice. This cross-sectoral group are regulated by the DCM in 2019. as we see, we have new approaches and a new system who has regulated finally the child protection system in Albania. The coordination at the local levels, duties and responsibilities of the members are described in the decision makers of Council of Ministers, who duties and responsibility for each of one, because finally we have let's say administrative measures for each of one who have responsibility to report for or to do the identification for child protections and children who are in risk, and especially the children who are victims in criminal justice. Why not? We have the DCM. DCM is the Decision Council of Ministers for referral and case management, based on the new law of 2017 for the right and for protection of the child, is adopted. Let's say a DCM for case management procedures, which of the stakeholders have the responsibility, the duty to do and to report a case. But the child protections workers have the duty to plan an individual plan for each of children who is under the protection in our system. It is one of the most important bylaws in Albania, in fact, for the implementation and functions of the child protection system, as it addresses processes, instruments, and mechanisms underlying an integrated child protection system, such as referral procedures, drafting and implementing the child protection plan, adopting and implementing protection measures. Under the new law, in the parallel, we have in 2017 the Code of Criminal Justice. For the first time in Albania, this code and this new law for children in contact and in conflict with law is, let's say, a quality legal procedures is the most important goal of the reform of the criminal justice system for children, and law in the right to protection of the child who are in the series of other procedural legal provisions in criminal matters that aim to improve the protection of children's rights as whole and the position of juveniles in the cooperation and with the author, witness, or victims of a criminal offense in particular. The Code of Criminal Justice into the force in January 2018 provides the rights of procedurals, guarantees of juveniles in conflict with law, in line with international standards of the restorative justice incorporated into the legal provisions guiding each procedures in juvenile justice. The juvenile justice has approved the new strategy in 2018 and 2021, and associated action plan for this strategy is the first document responding to the new legal framework and the current situations in the current situations in Albania, that it has 5 objectives and providers on interdisciplinary approach that will be into the existing national documents. Law number 37, Code Criminal of Justice for Children, provides the child in and with law or a victims or witness or in administrative and civil proceedings is a free legal and psychological assistance provided by the state. It provides that the National Chambers of Advocacy makes available a list of law enforcement specialized and training in juvenile justice for free legal aid institutions. We have a new law at the same time, is number 111 of 2017 on legal aid guaranteed by the state. This new law provides the reform and the procedures and mechanism to guarantee by the primary and secondary legal aid and the possibility of exemptions from fees and cost of expenses for the children and victims. The beneficiaries include the child victims or a child in conflict with law at every, let's say, and every criminal proceedings, child living in social care institutions or under guardianship seeks to initiate proceedings without approval of their legal guardian or against the victims or children when they are the victims. A registration system is foreseen, improving age disaggregated data collections, management of applicants, beneficiaries, and provision of state guarantee legal for victims. Child victims of criminal offenses have been provided psychological support through the stage of preliminary investigations carried out by the state police structures. Regarding services offered, there is a wide range of services offered to the children in need and their families. But Albania still lacks, in fact, we have to emphasize this, that we have still lacks specialized in long-term rehabilitation service for children, severely abused children, sexual abuse, and drug addictions. We have limited service in this in Albania for these target groups. Thank you so much. I don't want to take more time. Thank you for attention. But this is the new approach, a new system for child protections in Albania. What with challenges are the lack of services for these categories of children. Thank you. I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I was thanking you for the presentation. I think that it's very interesting to see a new system in place in all its components, and I think there are a lot of elements that can really represent a foundation also for a more specific action on children victims of crime. We are very interested in remaining in contact with you. We have a lot of Albanian children, as you know, here in Italy, and it will be very, very good to get to remain.
Thank you so much for, we appreciate so much as the Albanian country that you have hospitated many children. And
yeah, it will be very important.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Yeah.
Share an analysis also on the situation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much again. I think that we have really in some way to wrap up this very intense and rich exchange. We have a few questions. Probably, Daya, the exercise we have to do is to put together the question without pretending to provide an answer to all the important issues and the conclusion of this conversation together. So Daya, would you like to point out a few things? And of course, I mean, there will be a follow-up with all the questions. Many people also requested some materials, and it is really our intention to remain in touch and consider this conversation as part of a process that can continue in the following weeks, months, and years. Daya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pippo, and thank you again to all the speakers. It's been very, very interesting to listening to you. I'll try to summarize some of the questions that were raised in the chat, and would also very much invite the participants who asked those questions to take the floor. There was a question from Annelies Blondy about good practices in child-friendly judgments. I'm not, you know, this could be interpreted in many different ways. So please, I'm sorry. Please, do you still hear me? Yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So please feel free to take the floor and tell us more about what specifically you are interested in. There was also a few contributions from Raul Alexandru from Romania. I hope he is still with us. And you shared with us some information about the law in Romania. Thank you very much about this. It's always interesting to learn more about these specific aspects. And you asked a question about providing information to children, if I understood you correctly, in the context of the criminal justice system, both when children are victims of crime, but also when they are accused of crime. And you asked specifically about Italy, which institution might be the best place to provide this information to children. And these were two questions identified. Apologies if I missed anything, and I would invite you to take the floor and ask your questions. We have also seen there was an exchange in different languages, and this is excellent that you use the chat also for communicating. Thank you for making this event also a lively exchange at the national level. If there was anything we missed, for instance, from participants in Romania or in Bulgaria or in Greece, and if you are hesitating to speak up in English, please feel free also to take the floor in your national languages in Bulgarian, Romanian, and Greek. Specifically, I checked with our organizers who said it would be possible to translate also questions in national language. So thank you very much, and I would pass back. How do we handle this? Anyone would like to take the floor to tell us more about your questions regarding good practices in child-friendly justice and child-friendly judgments? Maybe you meant child-friendly justice. Maybe that was what you were interested in, Annelies Blondet, and practices in sharing information for children who are accused persons or victims of crime in Italy in the context of the proceedings.
Hello, it's Annelies Blondet here. If I may just clarify my question. So I'm Annelies Blondet, and I'm Junior Policy Officer at Victim Support Europe, and we are currently developing a discussion paper on how to deliver justice in a safe manner for victims, so for all victims of a crime, including child victims of a crime. And my question was really about like how judgments can be delivered in a child-friendly manner, and whether you have any views on that or any good practices, because we believe that it's like also the outcome of proceedings and the delivery of a judgment is also a part of the participation and safe participation of victims within the criminal justice system. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm not sure we will have the possibility to follow up on all the questions, but thank you for clarifying the question, and I think we will keep it in consideration. Usually when we do this thing, we have a kind of refrigerator where we put all the standing issue and try to solve it also later. Yes, is there anyone who would like to intervene at the moment? Okay, I think we set the time for 5 o'clock, so I'm sorry that we do not have time for a exchange. Is also difficult because we have been 130, now we are 100, so it's very difficult to exchange, but I'm sure there will be other occasion. We took a good note of the question and the exchange on the chat, and we will try to follow up, and we remain available for question or follow up from everybody. I just would like to say, there are a few keywords that I would like to share with you. One is philosophy. Now we have to get into a new philosophy in order to think about integrated system, a new philosophy also in relation with children, how we consider the centrality of children. And I'm referring to a very practical philosophy, a philosophy that can be translated into clear action and clear mandates. We need to reserve the right time for listening to children, and considering that an effective system can optimize the time we are having in some way. and provide a quality time for the child in order to avoid re-traumatization. We talk about spaces, context, attitudes, and I think that what I get from our exchange is really the need of having a kind of systemic approach where we really consider the relation among things and mandates as a very specific attention. Of course, we have all specific mandate, professional mandates, but it's important to enrich our professional mandates with this systemic dimension. And then this can also qualify the action for children. Flexibility, we talk a lot about the adaptation of the Barnhouse model to the various contexts and the various difficulties. We hear the complex situation of Naples, but we all have complex situation. The problem is really to address the question that were proposed at the beginning of this seminar and try to find solution. I mean, there are probably no pre-made solution. There are no toolkit. There are experience we can count on, but we have really to put our mind at work in order to find appropriate solution very close to children. I also would like to underline the importance of participation of children. Qualifying participation of children really is a way to address and orient our effort. Very general comments. I'm sorry, they are too general. I think the conversation has been much more specific and provided ground for follow-up. I would like to thank you all for participating. I would have liked to value the presence of each one of you at this conference, but as you know, since we are many, it's not possible to hear the voice of everybody. And in this sense, I think that there will be other occasion to continue our connection. I'm sure that we can build models or whatever just based on the experience and the expertise that you can provide with your professional perspective and personal perspective on this issue. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you to all the panelists for this intense conversation. Thank you also for the organizers. Thank you to Gabriela and the other colleagues who put together this moment. And thank you to the one who reached us from very far abroad, Hong Kong, Lebanon, and Cabo Verde. I think this is a moment where we are at the second eProtect project, but which is settling the right foundation for a transnational work that can be very useful at national level. So thank you very much again. Let's keep in touch, and we will follow up with some documentation. All the presentation will be shared with all of you. Thank you to Law and Internet Foundation for leading us in this interesting and very important project. And I think that's all. I hope to see you soon again. We hope to see you soon again, and wish you all the best in your path to child protection. Let me just also remember the situation is getting worse in Ukraine. I was spotting some news, and we count on all of you very sensitive to the lives of children to take a commitment in order to provide a peaceful message in this very dramatic moment for Europe, but I would say for all the world. So thank you very much for being with us. We try to, forget for a bit about this situation, but it's something that is unforgettable. And we have, in some way, as child rights advocates, to really have a voice on this situation and try to push for a peaceful solution to the situation. Thank you very much, and again, and have a nice evening, and see you soon.
Thank you, Pippo. Just a technical Yeah,
Thank you
I would
also.
like to. Yeah, I would like just to tell you that when you close, you will close your screen. There will be a short questionnaire to answer. If you can give us a feedback, we thank you very much. Thank you everybody for your participation.
Thank you, Gabriele, and thank you also to Benjamin for the technical support. And,
thanks, Gabriela, for the great organization, and to all the speakers, guys. It was great.
Thank you.
Ciao a tutti, grazie.
Bye.
Ciao Gabriella, ciao Pippo.
Bye bye.
Sì.
Bye
Thank
bye,
you.
obrigada.
Thank you also to the wonderful translation.
Obrigada, bye bye.
Ciao
Bravi,
Isabella.
bravi.
Ciao, bye bye.
Bye.
Ciao.